So do you ever have questions about your faith? Do you ever have doubts and wonder about the mysteries? Are there uncertainties like you never feel like you can quite resolve? I would dare say that most of us would answer yes to those questions. The real question becomes, what do we do with the mystery and the uncertainty when we come into this room or come together in faith community in some way? I'm Tim Selby here in the sanctuary at Heart of Steamboat. I appreciate you joining me today. I'd have to say, I think we can easily get off track if we think we come together as faith community to answer all of our questions, to clarify the mysteries, to dispel the uncertainties. And I think we're on the path to wisdom when we resist these temptations. I want to begin today with a quote by the great Franciscan Father Richard Rohr, a mystic, a wisdom teacher, so profound in our time. And he said this: people who have had any genuine spiritual experience always know that they don't know. They are utterly humbled before mystery. Wow, what a statement. They always know that they don't know. He goes on to say this: my scientist friends have come up with things like principles of uncertainty and dark holes. They're willing to live in imagined hypotheses and theories. But many religious folks insist on answers that are always true. We love closure, resolution, and clarity while thinking that we are people of faith. How strange, he says, that the very word faith has come to mean the exact opposite. Now, from time to time through the year, we've been focusing on this theme of wholehearted living and touching on Brené Brown's 10 guideposts for wholehearted living. And today I want to touch on one of those guideposts. It's this: it's how we cultivate a trusting faith and let go of our need for certainty. Like Richard Rohr, Brené Brown talks about how certainty is really the opposite of faith. In one of her videos, she says this. She says, you can hawk anything or sell. You can hawk anything with certainty. Just don't call it faith. If what you're peddling is rules, answers, judgments, fine. Make up a name for it. Just don't call it faith. I think you can see in the development of our theologies our desperate quest for certainty. In the Catholic world, you see it in the notion of papal infallibility, that on matters of faith and morals, the Pope is infallible. And we Protestants might scoff at that notion, say, hey, nobody is infallible. But you see this very same sentiment in the idea of biblical inerrancy. And we want to say this complex book of scriptures that's complex and nuanced and written over centuries of time is inerrant in all its form. We're trying so hard for certainty and hanging on to it with clenched fists. But you see, the way of Jesus has never called us to cling to certainty, but invites us into the freedom of trusting to let go. Over and over again, Jesus teaches us to let go, to develop a trusting faith. But too often, many of us in the church are unwilling to allow the mysteries to be just that. We are often unwilling to acknowledge that we don't know what we don't know. We've talked some about the rise of nuns in our culture. Not nuns, the sisters, but nuns not affiliated, not aligned with any particular religious tradition. And the rise of the nuns is driven largely by young people, but not entirely. But it's people who have a wide lens worldview, maybe young people who have grown up with the Buddhists next door and the Jewish family across the street, my atheist friend at work. And this wide lens worldview leads many of them to reject the certainties that are offered in formal religions, whatever their religion may be. And I have to say, that real upside of this is what a gift. What a gift this can be to the church. To invite the church to venture beyond its certainty into a way of embracing the wider world with a new way of seeing. You know, often when I talk to people who don't go to church, who don't consider themselves religious, I find that basically 100% of the time we share the same awe and wonder about life. We share the same awe and wonder when we experience love, or when we ski through the powder, or when we walk through a beautiful forest, when we laugh and hear the laughter of children. We can all experience something truly beautiful and sacred, and yet we can never adequately define it or hold on to it for ourselves. All of us, you and I, we know the experience of being blown away by beauty. Those times when you say, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. I can't believe it. We all know the experience of seeing somebody do something so lovingly that it takes our breath away. Yet often in modern culture, we prefer living in certitude over living even in reality, let alone living in the mysteries. This is very real in the life of faith, as churches with easy answers and confident leaders can become very attractive. But we also see it in the realm of politics, what I call the new American fundamentalism, that thing that we are clinging to, that thing we will invest our life in, that thing we will fight for. And we see in the political realm people on both sides, mind you, making arguments that they know are not true, but they cling to that simplistic certitude because it fits the narrative, where owning the day becomes more important than acknowledging the nuance and the uncertainty, where blatant tribalism trumps our shared humanity, our shared human experience. You see, one of the beautiful messages of our faith is that we can live in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of brokenness and paradox and mystery. And it's in the midst of these things, not in the fleeing from them, but in the midst of these things that we find growth and transformation, that we find the courage and the wisdom to be life-giving to those around us and to our world. For us who are part of a faith community together, I think in order to do this and to live so deeply, we must let go of our desire for certainty. We must allow our uncertainties to be expressed, our contradictions to be shared, our questions to be lifted up. Because when we do that, paradoxically, we'll actually reduce our anxiety level, and it will allow us to live more freely and deeply a life of faith. I want to talk about current events for a moment. Events in the Middle East, in Israel, in Gaza. I talk to a lot of people about these things, and one thing I find is most people that I know are appalled by what happened to the Jewish people on October the 7th. And most people I know are also deeply troubled at the death of so many people who already were living in difficult conditions in Gaza. Most people I talk to have great disdain and abhorrence for Hamas or anybody that lives in a terrorist fashion and would seek to inflict their ideas upon the world with violence and pain. Most people I know feel like Israel has a right to respond to being attacked, to having a very threat to their survival as a nation and as a people. And also most people I know wonder how many people will die in response. Our hearts break for the young and for the vulnerable caught in the crossfires of war. We wonder, what are the limits? Are there any limits? And how will any of this lead to peace for anyone in the long run? Our hearts break in so many ways, and we don't have any easy answers. But you see, the unconscious current that runs through our culture is to simplify it all, right? To squash any nuance, to ignore the complexity, to repress our internal uncertainties and pick a side. Primarily meaning pick a side in our American political sphere. Pick a side and fight. Cling to a position and defend it at all cost. Last week at our forum on fundamentalism, Rabbi Colby talked about how she understands the desire to make things simple and easy. And I think it is true for a time. For a moment, it can make us feel better in an uncertain world to wrap ourselves in a blanket of faux certainty for a moment. But life and faith and politics are complicated and nuanced, and the certainty we wish for is simply out of our reach. You know, oftentimes the church is viewed as the place where we're going to go to find the answers. But on the contrary, I think the church should be the place where we go to be honest about our uncertainty. When we're honest about our uncertainty, then we live in faith. Faith that's described in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. What an amazing scripture. You can ponder this line for a while. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. Wait, we have the very substance of that which we are hoping for? And somehow that which we hope for is present within us in the very moment, even as we hope for it? Ooh, ponder that for a while. What a beautiful scripture that is. Brene Brown defines faith in a similar way when she says this. She says, faith is a place of mystery where we find the courage to believe in what we cannot see and the strength to let go of our fear of uncertainty. I think when we acknowledge our uncertainties and when we call out our fears, we can begin to walk more deeply in faith. And then we can embody that faith in the world. And then, you know what we do? Here's what we do. Then we invest our lives in the building of a more peaceful world, even though we know we will never live in a world where peace is fully realized. That's faith. We work to break down the walls and barriers that are built up between people, knowing that there will always be another wall. That's faith. We proclaim Jesus as the Prince of Peace, Jesus who was violently executed, Jesus in whose name so many people have been killed around the world, and yet we will never let go of proclaiming Jesus as the Prince of Peace. That is faith. You see, we live in the model of Moses, who led the people out of bondage towards the promised land, and who at the end of his life knew he was never going to get there. But Moses found, and hopefully we have found, the wisdom to know it's not so much about the arriving as much as it is in having faith in who we are called to be all along the journey. To have the trusting faith, to walk the road, knowing that you and I, we will never in this earthly sense arrive. But we will never stop walking, living, working, and hoping in this thing that we call faith, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. We will never stop living and trusting in faith. Never. I appreciate you joining me, and grace and peace be upon you.